Hello, everyone. Today we're talking about day 23, which is Monday, the 19th of November. So, this is Thanksgiving week, so there's just the Monday. So the idea here is to catch them a bit from the last week and throw them off into the long weekend to do some serious work on their web text, on developing it, on finishing the research that's involved in it, and on beginning to understand how they want to package and present it. So, the first thing I have set aside in class is a research process roundtable. So the assumption here is that their data gathering probably isn't actually done yet. Whatever they put in their poster design is some of it, but probably isn't all of it. So want you to get them into groups to do a bit of writing to describe where they are right now, and then to share where their research is and where it's going. If they're this is a moment where if they're finding they didn't get good data yet, that they're not happy with the results, this is the moment to brainstorm a next step, an approach that they can add on now, a way that they can make these projects more complex, more interesting, and more complete in terms of what they're looking at. So there's some directions for that in the binder, but they're pretty loose, honestly. I have this set aside for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. They might need the time a lot. They also might not, depending on how far along they are individually. So you'll have a sense of that within your individual classes, I think. Next thing is to workshop what they brought in today, which should be their homepage, which is the introduction to their web text. I should say here, throughout the web text drafting process, there's a bit of genre interference that goes on here, because the ultimate product for this is a dynamic, interactive website that has a full recount and story of the research project that they did. That's the end result we want to go toward. But the way to get there actually through drafting is trickier. As I have it here, it sort of is laid out as a fairly traditional research report to just get the content, to get the words on the page. That's not the format I want that to arrive at the audience, but I think that is the format they probably need, and simply to account for the information that they want to put into it. So the traditional report genre that they're using a little bit is really a data gathering tool. And then the web text is how they're going to organize it and package it and actually deliver it to an audience. So it'll be useful to remind them a couple of times that they shouldn't plan on their web text looking like a research report. It shouldn't have the same kind of sort of distinct cutout sections as the poster did. It should be something they engage with. So the material that would go in the data gathering methods section on the poster, maybe that goes on 3 different pages of their website in places that make sense for the flow that they're trying to get to. Their introduction, maybe there's one main introduction and then smaller introductions to different sections. They should understand that they have to make decisions about how this material will be interacted with on their web text, and that goes beyond simply what are the words they're saying. So remind them of that as often as you get the chance. This workshop here I have down for about 15 minutes. The task really is to talk through how they're approaching it, the language of it, what they're actually saying to introduce people. I think this isn't in the binder, but I think a really cool thing to do would be to bring up a Kairos article homepage, main page, and sort of do a genre analysis of it to figure out what does it do? how does it grab audience attention, if that's one of the things it does? How does it direct audiences on how to use the text, if that's one of the things it does? Get them to actually break it down sentence by sentence if they can. That'll help them more usefully actually look at their own to see how it's doing that. And that's the goal there, is that they leave this workshop with a sense of how to flesh out, how to improve, how to add character and appeal to their homepage. It's what's got to get their audience to want to click through for more. This is the piece of persuasive, creative writing that ends this class. So as much as you can get them to see it that way, the better. From there, you're moving into a genre discussion a little bit about the next sections of their web text. Again, these are laid out like a research report genre, and you can talk about that so long as you remind them that they're going to be transitioning or packaging this in a different format. So the next sections are the background, the methodology, and the findings, in addition to the homepage. So intro, background, methodology, findings. There's some points to hit here. The background section is essentially a summary of the published research, like they did for the proposal, plus other information to sort of walk their reader into their report and see why it's complex and interesting. Methodology, how they gathered the data and why they chose those methods. The findings, what their methods produced. It's not discussion or analysis yet, so much as it's just reporting, as you know, same as the poster more or less. I have a side note here about how to make it interesting. I think for this genre analysis, it would be cool to actually show how these steps from a research report can work in a dynamic setting. So I've put a link there to a TED Talk that I like for these purposes. I don't think it's on Canvas yet. I'll put it there. But you can also Google it. It's TED Talk, Joshua Klein on the intelligence of crows. It's talking about research on how crows respond to different stimuli and how their intelligence doesn't match their brain size. And it's a cool, fun thing that if you pay close attention, you can identify when the introduction goes, when the background goes, when the methodology goes, when the findings goes. So it'd be a good point to stop and pause at those moments and to say that, get them into groups and to say that's the task here, is to identify where we're switching from one to the other. Play around with that, so plan on how you'd like the logistics of that to go, but I think it can provide a useful example of how these different sections work, but also of how they can be fluid things that are artistic, that are interesting, that are full of character, as opposed to a simple report. So that is there for you. The overall points here are that they are the writers here. They are the authors making decisions about how this is going to look. They need to cover this content and provide this kind of information to be a good research project. But fundamentally, it should look unique. It should be uniquely their project. For next time, they are bringing in content that covers these sections: homepage, which is the intro, background, methodology, and findings. If they are ready to, they can put that text on their web text, bring that in if it's a lab or they have a computer, or print it out if you're not in a lab, print out those pages. So they can either bring in the web version of that content as it will appear in their web text, or if they aren't that far yet, they can bring it out so it looks like a report that has headings and the text there, in which case they should write with it notes on how they would actually present it. Ideas of this will go on this page, this will go on this page, that kind of thing. But either way, they're bringing in that content for next time, which is laid out there. They've got a long break to produce that content. This would be a really good time to remind them of their collaborative options here, that make sure that they're both on the WordPress site that they're building, that they're both users on there. They can post some content on there and share it that way, or they can share it through a Google document, or they can email it to each other, whatever. Just make sure that they establish a plan for that. And also make sure it's quite clear that the research, the primary research, needs to be done, completely finished, by the next time you meet. You're going to want to see their informed consent forms in whatever fashion makes sense to you and your class and what you've been doing with them. But you're going to want to hold them a little bit accountable for actually keeping track of who they've been talking to. This forces them to take a tally themselves, and this kind of tally taking will be really useful as they move into the final stages of this. So try and hold them accountable to that as much as it makes sense to you and doesn't overburden you. I hope this goes well, and I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving afterward.